Hey guys, it's Matt. If you're driving or just listening, don't need to see this unless thumbnails and thumbnails of Gene Hackman and Will Smith and movie poster thumbnails are basically the greatest thing you've ever been associated with in your life. Other than that, you don't need to see this. I'm the only movie reviewer in history that can't show more than a few seconds of the movie. And even if I tried a few seconds, it still could be blocked worldwide, so it's just not worth even trying. You know, if you haven't seen this, Enemy of the State, the movie is Enemy of the State, 1998. All right, you probably have an idea of what it's about. I won't give too many things away, although are spoilers even possible when the movie's over 20 years old. But Will Smith gets some information, some classified information, say, or some videotape. He doesn't even realize what he has. And then it's like the entire infrastructure of the deep state moves against him to try to bring him down. And if half the movie's running around, he doesn't even know why they're coming after him. But let's just, guys, I'm not going to talk about Enemy of the State, this whole video. I'll just use it as a jumping off point to discuss the greater reality, which is breaking down as an absolute joke, which the two major premises of this channel, where I am now, I'm not sure will ever change. And they're quite simple. So it's kind of like once you see it, you see it. And I'm going to keep showing examples as long as this channel exists, and it's fun to do this. I think now we see there's more 7-Eleven job application submissions in predictive programming, movies, art, music, rap album covers. There's more things that talk about the 7-Eleven job application prior to the event than after. It happened. That major league thing happened, and then after there's less than before it happened. How's that possible? So we'll talk about, again, the nature of the predictive programming. Is huge concepts at play again here, like retrocausality, the past of a major event rippling back through time to change things? Or is it just some genius in the truth community in 2009 or 2010 popped up out of their stool and said, "It's the men in black are running around making phone calls." It's a sliding scale, guys. It's a sliding scale. Just because I don't think it's all that, again, I've said this 1,000 times. People put words in my mouth and say it's always going too far. It's always a retrocausality. No, I'm sure the men in black run around too. No pun intended. Will Smith, he was a Men in Black with Tommy Lee Jones, but this is Gene Hackman. No pun intended. So, Enemy of the State, here we go again. 1998, predictive programming on the future submission of the 7-Eleven job application. Normalization, habituation, predictive programming of all the Snoden revelations, of all the privacy invasions that technology would take over people's lives, start recording everybody's email, listening to everything said. Of course, there are elements here in a movie like this that there could be a lot of explanations as to why it's so predictive. And it's not always all or none. So we'll talk about the movie and all of the predictive programming nature of this movie without giving it away, because it's so good. And it's not that good. It really isn't. Unless you like these thrillers where Will Smith's running for his life and around every corner is a bad guy popping out of the trash can to get him. And, it's interesting, but it really isn't that good. It really isn't that good. Guys, before getting into this, just want to lay out the premise of this channel, and I don't know if it'll ever move off of this, because you get to a certain point and people will be yelling at me because I'm going to go back and do a screen exercise. Yep, that's what this high school class is. If this isn't for you, I'll try to make it fun, even for the 10th level Jedis. If it's not for you, move on to your community college, graduate. Go ahead. Don't stay in junior year after year like Cuba Gooding Jr. in radio. Graduate. I'll make it as fun as I can. But here's the premise of the channel. Probably won't ever move off of this. It's basically what was said in a roundabout way, and I was all over the place in the last two videos. The first half is there's so many, in this reality itself, so many, the book is on my lap, hundreds and hundreds of pages, documenting the impossible coincidences, all the things they pulled off, all the conspiracy, like Titanic, for example, has 3 layers of conspiracy, 4 layers of conspiracy, all the predictive programming about the major events coming, not just the 7-Eleven job application, but what we're seeing now. Like the Sade video is an ode to the 7-Eleven job application, which will be coming, but there's 2 big needles the way they filmed it. You have the needle of the Empire State Building and the needle of the Chrysler Building. Somehow that is all worked in. It is not a coincidence. All the fake events pulled off. The Apollo and Gemini and Mercury missions with 50,000 people working on it, but nobody talks. It's not very real, the reality, or it's not real at all. And it is our burden to carry this, or as Christian would say, carry our cross, to know this about the world, to carry it ourselves. If we find another 10th level Jedi, we could acknowledge each other and say, hey, let's talk. But not to, and if it's not another 10th level Jedi, not to push it in somebody else's face, just to carry this information. The world isn't real at all. Nobody could have pulled all this stuff off decade after decade. Then you throw the Mandela effect in, and it's not possible. This by itself. Just one movie we'll talk about here, Enemy of the State, is a reality breakdown to a degree in terms of all the predictive nature of showing you what's coming, and it's a joke. So you get to the point, it's like, I don't need to see anymore. I don't need to look at anymore. I carry this information about the world, and I can't push it, or I'm not going to push it on anybody. I've had enough. Triple X in the diner. Everything around me is fake, and I don't play it anymore. That's part 1. Part 2 is the back end, which you could call the Braveheart poster, Not Every Man Truly Lives, or you could call it the Lou Gehrig. And I did the Lou Gehrig all day yesterday, and I felt good doing it. Absolutely felt good doing it. Lavette has talked about a year ago, she was real big on appreciation and gratitude, and she said it really changed her life to a degree. I did it all day yesterday. At a certain point, Cat hadn't peed on anything for a while, and watching Pam's cat, which I go back with 10 years, and just kind of, felt good. And this tropical storm was coming in. It didn't really hit here. I think it turned towards the Jersey Shore. It turned east, but that I had a ton of dead trees from this whatever this I don't know what it was, eating the bark out. It was a bug infestation, but the trees aren't dying this year like they have in the past. And I said to myself 3 or 4 times, I said, I stopped in the moment and said, I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth. And I'm going to keep doing it. And what that is, remember from the last few videos, is it's an ending of attachment. It's saying, I appreciate I appreciate this life experience, but I'm done with it. I'm not attaching to it. I wish this would happen, or I wish next summer I could do this, or no, it's standing in the moment and saying, I don't need any more. He didn't need any more baseball, Lou Gehrig. He didn't say, boy, if the doctors, maybe they'll come up with a cure, that hope, that holding on. Maybe they'll come up with a cure and I can come back and play before you guys again. Well, that's a gigantic Jacob Marley chain. Just said, he didn't even say he's done, but the message was overwhelming, is I'm done, and I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth, even in light of them saying I have a dread disease and I'll be dead soon. And I did it a bunch of times yesterday and felt good doing it. And I think it's a proclamation to remove attachment is the most powerful thing in it. And if Nibiru comes around the corner, then we're done. It doesn't matter. I won't have one regret. So that's, to me, what I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth. That second part is all about. So my whole truth journey. Let me show some new thumbnails to anybody interested, because these are extremely exciting, especially when you get Will Smith in a pose like this. Well, let's do this. This picture of Will Smith here is just too good. That's creepy. I got to turn that off. Okay, here's another movie poster. If you're driving and not seeing this, you're really, really jealous. So, doing this hardcore for 10 years, somebody's crying out from their bathtub, doing everything you looked at, everything's fake, bang events. You looked at how somebody sent me an email, how NASA's actually reconnected with Voyager 1 or 2 with Voyager. I think they connected with both of them recently, but one is Voyager 2, just the toaster that was originally put up, and one is converted to Voyager, which was the 100 million times more powerful than your modern day supercomputer, converted itself into a sentient life form, artificial intelligence, Voyager. That's what Voyager 1 became, and it's coming back to get Earth actually as we speak. Voyager 1 as a giant artificial intelligence, the way the yellow power of fear came back to kind of threaten the Earth in the Green Lantern. So, guys, after 10 years of doing of all this research, all this breakdown on fake events, move along, Czar. Move along, little doggy. It gets what you do is you jump into it, and it gets ridiculously complex. Every breadcrumb leads to another breadcrumb. I was watching a Mark Devlin video. I appreciate the stand he's taking out in the UK about this thing we're going through now, because whatever tyranny is here, it's there, times 10. But he made a different type of video about the deep state connections in the music industry is his thing. And, I've seen presentations on this before. It's not my area of expertise. My area of expertise. But as I'm watching it, I find it very interesting, but I'm thinking, okay, one more area of reality where there's just this giant conspiracy. And not that his connections, I'm sure, are all correct. But again, I go back to the reality itself. What type of world could pull all this off? He's talking about, connections related back to Elvis, and we know the Jim Morrison thing in the Laurel Canyon, and Jim Morrison's father was a general, and the Laurel Canyon and the 26 Club, all that died in 26, and just, how many of those deaths or suicides are real, Matt? How many are fake, and how many are on the island with David Bowie? Just one more thing, the reality just pulls off over and over. It couldn't happen. It just keeps happening. The hope, that stupid scenario I keep pulling off of the day or moment of our death, the archonic being is like, how much did we have to show you? You fools kept thinking it was real, and men running around pulling it off time after. I'm done with it. So it gets very complicated when you jump into truth. And then as you do more and more and more of it and say, there's no way this could be pulled off. There's no way the synchronicities. I'm going to reach over, guys, and grab the book. You got to trust me. I didn't bookmark it. I'm just going to turn randomly to any page inside the What Are the Chances. Here we go. I'm doing this on the fly. How is it possible in a PBS interview, the owner of the WTC, Silver guy, the Silver Surfer, he says, what are the chances, he says, that we decide to pull it? And the point here being made is that he admits that they decided to do something to Seven, admits it in a PBS interview, but anybody we ever mention that to or show that video, I've shown that to Tony, and he did some sort of weird research. That showed that if you could hook up cranes, and it was mad. It potentially could have hit. It's now coming back to me what he said. It could have potentially hit another building, or it was weakened. So they were going to pull it over. When of course that you can just easily research the term "pull it," meaning the I was going to say pyrotechnics. That's a fireworks display, like the incendiaries or the TNT hooked up. He said it had to do something with hooking cranes up to pull a weakened building over. What part of Google fed him that information? So we can't, even when the guy admits it, even when he says it, it was nobody believes it. Nobody, Okay, I just turned to that at random. That is not even the best example, but there's just hundreds and hundreds of pages here. And in each case, they present the absurdities, the ridiculousness. The guy actually says it was pulled, but nobody believes it. We're still, so that's just, okay, I did it at random. But you see what I mean? So, Mark Devlin's talking about all the connections. I'm just going, oh, okay. So one more part of reality that's a triple layer conspiracy that they just got away with for decades and decades, with nothing ever being leaked and nothing ever leaking into the normie life. So, I've seen enough. Most of us have seen enough. I'm not going to try to analyze anything anymore. The entire reality to me is a fake presentation, and to win the life test, it's a burden. I believe this is it was. I was going to say, and I've been very roundabout, but it starts very complicated. But then over time, the point I was trying to make, and I'm glad I remembered, was it gets simpler and simpler because you eliminate things like Sherlock Holmes, and it gets down to a half a page. What seemed to be incredibly complex, with hundreds of things to research. And oh my gosh, all these works of Madame Blavatsky that have to be read, and every work of Crowley needs to be analyzed, and all of this research. As you look at how the reality operates, it just, as you say, this couldn't happen if it were real. So as it becomes less real to you, Mandela affected or not, you just eliminate things that the Men in Black couldn't be pulling off every time after time, and it becomes a half page. The world's not very real. This is a burden that I have to carry on my own. One of the key life tests is carrying it, seeing it and carrying it, not trying to put it in somebody's face, just seeing it for what it is and carrying that burden throughout the rest of our lives. On the other side, just every day doing a Lou Gehrig, appreciate a certain moment that you wouldn't want to be anywhere else. One of the keys too, when I did Lou Gehrig, I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth yesterday, is in cutting ties or cutting Jacob Marley chains, was I said to myself, if somebody waltzed in here and said, here's a magical, I'm going to, whatever, I could take you anywhere, and let me change movie posters because this is so exciting. You could go anywhere right now, whether it be a pass on net jets to fly off to the pyramids, or we could teleport you somewhere. Where would you want to go? All on us, all paid, Matt. I wouldn't want to go. I said it, and I wasn't like I was trying to convince myself. I was 100% on this. I wouldn't want to go anywhere. Just standing here. I'm happy to watch Gouda while Pam's away. I like having Gouda back here, the brown tabby. And somebody could have said, free tickets to Paris? I would have said, I would much rather be here with Gouda. And that's a Lou Gehrig moment. I don't want any more of what your world offers. Doesn't mean I'm going to go jump off a bridge, but I'm done with it. It's a few sentences, and that's what the whole truth pursuit boils down to me. Now, people did get on me a bit. A few people got on me about when I showed the kid that pitched the next day, he got, let's show Will Smith running through the streets in a bathrobe, because see, all his clothes were bugged up. He had bugs in his shoes, and they were tracking his ass. He had bugs. He had a pen that he liked, like, what do you call those those real expensive pens? They put a bug in that. They'd put a bug up his ass if they could. That's like that scene in Man on Fire. He's like, it's not very sophisticated, but very powerful. That's what you got up your ass right now. Come on, sir. One wish. Grant me one wish, sir. One wish. I wish you had more time. And then that thing in his ass blows up. You know La Hermandad? I'm the president. That didn't sound Spanish, sorry. So he had bugs everywhere, and then he had to strip. He had to strip naked. He grabbed a bathrobe in the hotel, and he's running through the streets, and they couldn't track him anymore. So, guys, it starts off very, very complicated, and then as you do it long enough, and do the Sherlock Holmes and eliminate the imposter. It just gets down to a half a page. And, this is something we have to do for ourselves. Somebody actually made a comment in the last video that I like what you're saying, Matt. And, but if I just can't take I won't do it just yet for the sake of this person. I can't take the worry about yourself. I can't take it when you do that. And I almost had to turn the video off. Well, maybe I do it a lot, but it doesn't come up more than 2 or 3 times in a video. So you're going to turn, if you like this message as to potentially hitting on certain parts of how the nature of reality works and how you as a spirited being need to navigate through it. And there's actually a few points in here that actually, if I've hit on a few points that are right, I'm probably wrong a lot. But if I hit on a few points that are right, the message is pretty important. But you're going to turn it off because you can't stand the worry about yourself. I mean, come on, really? I think that person might have an entity attachment. The entity attachment would say, the message here is not something the entity likes, and I'm going to convince this person, as the entity attachment, I'm going to convince this person that they are like the worry about yourself is like a kryptonite, and if it comes up, they have to turn the video off. Sorry. What other incredible thumbnails can we pull? Okay, let's talk about Enemy of the State here. All of these, and it's a very important movie from a predictive nature. It's riddled with stars. A nobody, Jack Black, is an NSA. Let's talk about what the movie is and the nature, the predictive nature of it, what it's designed to do. I don't think in this video I'm going to get into retrocausalities and, this one to me, but let me just address it for this one I would say is not any of that. When you have this cast of actors, you have Jerry Bruckheimer, Tony Scott, Will Smith, Gene Hackman, Jack Black is a nobody playing just this little analyst role, or he tracks phone conversations for the NSA. Other major actors, I don't know their names, you've seen. This was, I would say, pretty much 100% coordinated by the men in black. And there's definitely several 7-Eleven references. One of the bad guys' dates of birth, they're going through dossiers on bad guys or something, whatever a dossier is, if I have that right. One of the bad guys' date of birth is 9/11/1940. 9/11/1940. So is it a coincidence? No. This is one that they did. The predictive nature of this is men in black running around. And I don't want to talk about this movie in light of, you have Jack Black. There you go, Men in Black, Jack Black. Although his role, again, is very minor. He's not running around looking for Rosemary. He's just some guy that listens in on, everybody's phone conversations for the NSA. This is not nearly that predictive at all for the 7-Eleven job application. Although, again, there are several things you could point to that relate to that. But it's more about the Snoden. I hope not. When I say Snoden revelations, I remember to remind anybody new here that there's no way I believe that that's true. Of course, I mean everything he came out and said was accurate, but it was all it was on purpose. He was a stooge. He was used by the system itself to do these revelations about how the government deep state is listening to everything, spying on everything, reading every Facebook comment, reading every YouTube post or comment, reading every tweet, email, phone conversations. And that's one thing that those Snoden revelations came out, all basically a revelation of the method. Snowden was no hero. Of course, he's just an actor for the deep state. It's my opinion. Am I pretty sure that? Yeah, but if I guess 99%, I should continue to remind you it's my opinion. But no movie has been more predictive for the whole destruction of privacy, the government and NSA listening to every phone conversation, every tweet, every email, all going into the Whopper central supercomputer and the sentient world simulation. No movie's been as predictive as this. This takes the cake. The only movie that gets close is one of the Fast and Furious, but that was several years later, so this one still is the king. The Fast and Furious, the girl that they hook up with, she has some sort of chip that can track anybody like immediately anywhere in the world. The Fast and Furious showed that, but that was kind of when the Snowden revelations were coming out, and everybody knew everybody was being traced and tracked. When this movie came out, it was just starting. It was actually a few years before that every single fake Animal Farm conservative radio talk show host or your Alex Jones type started talking about invasion of privacy and then listening to everything. I'm sure Alex Jones talked about that first in terms of the revelation of the method that comes through Alex Jones. But in terms of it making like Fox News, and then Glenn Beck started talking about it, this movie was way ahead of its time. And not to talk too much about the movie, but the way they can track Will Smith is just off the charts. You wouldn't believe it really if you saw it in 1998. You might get a sense this is coming and coming pretty soon. You'd believe it now. I mean, they put bugs in the heel of his shoes. They know exactly what floor in the hotel he's in. He uses a payphone. And he used a payphone. Nobody would have believed it in 98. Did they have this in 98? Probably, but I don't know. They definitely have it today, so what's the difference? He picks up a payphone, and Jack Black, sitting in his NSA cube, he locates Will Smith's location from a 30-second call from a payphone, just on voice recognition and things like that. I mean, he cannot shake those. And in fact, they track him so well that the movie is kind of ridiculous. It starts to break down and said, well, they could track him that well, they'd have him picked up in 15 minutes. Of course, it has to continue to be a movie, and he has to keep evading them with one guy's help, Gene Hackman, who used to work for the NSA, so he knows all their tricks. It gets pretty stupid. But in terms of the tracking, I mean, what do they have? They do a big push on satellites. I don't know what a satellite is. I kind of stay out of that. It's just I know nobody went up in a tuna fish can and landed and took their little dune buggy out, drove around making rooster tails and buzzed Cauldron, flipping his empty cans of Pabst Blue Ribbon all over the moon. I know that didn't happen. But in terms of, because I don't, in terms of, me, I don't believe anything of what they say space is. I mean, I don't believe, I'm not saying this properly, but you don't know what it is. See, that's the thing. So just because the whole presentation of space is not what Carl Sagan said, with his billions and billions and billions of light years and things just travel, the Voyager, Voyager 1 and 2, just going forever and ever. And then Neil deGrasse, took his place, and in the UK that Brian Koch took his place. And we don't believe what they say, but we don't know what is up there. In other words, so I can't say there's no satellites because we don't know what it is up there. Maybe they just went up there and they found that there's an edge of the firmament and they put a damn hook on like you'd hang a hanging plant. How do you know? I don't know. I'm not saying this is what's there. I'm not pushing on my roulette chips here. But it gets like, it was like a gelatin or something. They say we can just put a hook in this and hang a satellite like a hanging plant and looking down on you. Just because the presentation of space is not what Brian Koch says it is, that doesn't mean they can't have satellites. And they talk about the stationary nature of satellites, where it just happens to be going around at the exact speed. They synchronize it. Geosynchronous orbit, is that what they call it? Just kind of came to me, if that's correct. Geosynchronous, something like that. Maybe you go up there and it's just there's this thick gelatin stuff at the edge of the firmament, and just put in a plant hanger. You hang the satellite, it's not going to move. It's just going to hang over, Tel Aviv or Moscow or Washington, D.C. and look down, and maybe it can read license plates. Maybe all of that is true. There's something to do with telecommunications and bouncing it off and things looking down. I don't, that doesn't mean, it's what they presented, that the Space Shuttle Columbia goes up, open its bay doors, the Canada arm hooks onto the satellite, and it floats out. There could be satellites, just something going on up there. We don't know. With the truth community, very box thinking, most of the truth community. It's all or none. Oh, we know the presentation of what's up there is fake, so there's no possibility there's satellites. Maybe it's hooked onto something. Who knows? Who knows? They throw it in this jelly and it just kind of hangs up there, and they use it as a satellite. How the hell do we know? Let's think big here. Let me get a new thumbnail here because these are exciting. What's this one? Hey, here you go. Look at this. That's what I was talking about. Thomas Bryan Reynolds. It's a dossier on somebody. I guess this was from. Yep, it's from Our Conspiracy. Somebody came up, found the 7-Eleven job application reference that I noted. 9/11/40 from Thomas Bryan Reynolds. It comes up in the movie. This is a thumbnail image from a conspiracy website, one of our brethren's. And 40. That's H.G. Wells. Was it H.G. Wells who said, yeah, he's Mr. Wells, do you still predict war coming in Europe in 1940? Yes, I do. I can't get in H.G. Wells. I'm still predicting war in 1940. They interviewed him 6 years before it happened. He predicted basically the exact time World War II would start. It has nothing to do with 1941. That's the U.S. It's not always about the U.S. Hitler was rolling his panzers into Poland and Czechoslovakia in 1940. So H.G. Wells got it right 8 years before the event. And this people just think he's just a good predictor. Sitting on the pod and in the Hamptons, he just knows the ins and outs of European politics so well. H.G. Wells, he can predict war and the date of it 8 years in advance. We would come along and say they knew the date of war, and H.G. Wells was used as a mouthpiece because they didn't have the internet and they didn't have the predictive nature to put it in movies and things like that. And then people call us crazy, conspiracy people. It makes more sense to your Aunt Ginny and the guy down the cul-de-sac that H.G. Wells, sitting on the pod here in the United States. Well, maybe he was British. What's the difference? I mean, he's going to know exactly when. Is he U.S.? It doesn't matter. But he's going to know exactly when Hitler's going to start to roll into Poland and Czechoslovakia 8 years ahead of time, and then reiterate that in an interview 6 years before it happened. But yeah, we're crazy. We're crazy. Oh, it also has. Okay, it has John Voight. He's horrible. John Voight can be pretty good in some things, but just like Seinfeld made fun of him, he can be horrible, and he's just horrible. I don't think they ever really say his title, like assistant director of intelligence, NSA, or he's not the top guy. He's like that member in Clear and Present Danger with Jack Ryan and Harrison Ford, the third one. He was assistant deputy director of CIA. He shared the position with that asshole. He was in Mission Impossible, the guy that just plays that asshole. That's what John Voight was, the equivalent of that asshole in Clear and Present Danger. Remember James Earl Jones, Terrence Mann was sick. We was sick, so Jack Ryan had to take over the position. He wants a bill not to be passed, or be passed, whatever it is, so badly he takes his thugs out. And in the movie, if it's the first scene, so I'm not giving too much away, oh boy, take that thumbnail off as soon as possible. I just want to stare at John Voight. They kill a congressman in the movie. And it's the first scene, so if you want to watch, you're not missing anything. But then he has this own little fiefdom inside the NSA of thugs like Jack Black and other actors who you recognize, you've seen before, where they can just partition off their own supercomputers and do their own covert work and just track. They killed this congressman just on their own without any permission from the other deep state thugs. But then they can just kind of do whatever they want. Somehow Will Smith gets somebody gives him a videotape of it happening, and he doesn't, even for half the movie, he doesn't know he has the murder of the congressman on videotape. And that's why they're chasing him. This thumbnail says, "Do you think privacy is dead? Enemy of the state." Yeah, it definitely, boy, there's, and I forgot about this. The actress, I forget her name. She played in Jerry Maguire. She was Rod Tidwell's wife in Jerry Maguire. She was one of the cookies in Ray. had her own HBO show. I forget her name, but her big thing is she keeps hounding Will Smith about invasion of privacy. Who's going to? Well, then there's monitors that are going to monitor the government in terms of our invasion of privacy. And she says, who's going to monitor the monitors? She's big on this kind of conspiracy stuff that the government is spying, and she keeps bringing this subject up. And again, when this movie came out, guys, it was not the issue it became 5, 7, 8 years later. Not even in the same ballpark. This was the first time anybody heard about people going privacy. Nobody cared. Nobody could even imagine the government had any sort of capabilities like what is presented in this movie. So they have, she plays the role in pushing privacy. That is the biggest predictive movie to help. And then they just normalized it. They habituated an entire population, and I've talked about this many times before, so I won't spend much time on it, that, of course, the government, my aunt Cindy got to the point where she's like, well, yeah, of course they're, after at beginning, she didn't believe me, but then it become habituated, normalized. Movies like Snoden, movies like The Fifth Estate, which was about the fairy tale of Julian Assange, and how he's running around trying to help everybody, of course, and there's just no way. You see how sophisticated the NSA can be from a movie like this, but they have no way. Julian Assange, they show him just like when he started out with a laptop and he had somebody with a laptop helping him. They have no way of tracking that. Yeah, sure. So then my Aunt Cindy comes around. She comes around. Eventually, they've completely normalized and habituated her and put her in the right mind control frequency, where eventually she says to me, well, I don't love it, but I have nothing to hide. That's the script, and the Whopper supercomputer, monitored by the deep state in their the Illuminati window in Chernobyl Control Center. They know when anybody says that, they've got him. This person over here just said, "I've got nothing to hide." Oh, we got him. That's the ultimate level we could get in terms of getting a mind. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. I don't know if I even can say the name of the college fund or this video will be banned. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. They know they got somebody when they parrot the script, the ultimate script of, I think they are reading more than we thought and reading tweets but I have nothing to hide. And if it could save us from the next 7-Eleven job application, Matt, somebody right now is trying to take their job application into a 7-Eleven. And don't you want the good guys to kind of get in front of that and foil that plot? So that's when they hear, but the key phrase is what they're listening for in the normie is the key phrases that are planted. And we should do a whole video on what are the key phrases where the Whopper supercomputer and the sentient world simulation knows they have somebody in the exact mental state that they want. This we could do a whole video on with the privacy or the lack of privacy and the destruction of the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments of the Bill of Rights. I have nothing to hide. Oh, I see. So it's just fine. Flush 3. We still got 7 left. We still got 7 of the Bill of Rights left. So we lost 3. We got 7. Well, we don't really have 2 anymore because there's over, if you include local ordinance and local ordinance at local jurisdiction levels, there's like 10,000 laws that I would say control firearms, but it's not control. It's ban. It's eliminate magazines or clips of over a certain size. So when you have 10,000 rules and jabs at the Second Amendment, the Second Amendment's pretty much gone. It's still there, but put it this way, it's holding on with fingers. You have the 10th Amendment and 9th Amendments are gone. The 10th Amendment, I sometimes confuse it with the 9th, but the biggest violation of all the Bill of Rights, well, the biggest violation at this point on a case-by-case basis is privacy. If you add up all the ways they've invaded privacy and read everything, I mean, it's in the billions and billions and billions of privacy invasions. But before that, it was the 10th Amendment of the Bill of Rights that it's crystal clear, and it might be the 9th, but just give me a pass on this because the 9th and 10th are very similar. It says that what the federal government can do is in this thing called the Constitution. And it's very small. It's like a little comic book. There's nothing at this point. It's become a comic book, but there's nothing there. It's just like, I don't know. You print it out in different ways with different fonts. It's like 20 pages. There's nothing there. The base Constitution, not all the amendments and things like that. So what we can do as the federal government is in here. It's not a whole lot because it's on a short little book. Everything else is the authority of the states and the local jurisdictions. Pretty simple. So it's like, how to fix potholes? 10th Amendment says, well, look in the Constitution. Does the Constitution say the federal government will dictate how to fix potholes? Flipping pages. It doesn't seem to be in here. See, most things that come up aren't in there. It's not in here. Well, it's very simple then. That means you figured out locally. And this is an example where, see, that doesn't have to do with the destruction of a human spirit. So this is one thing they still allow them to do locally, which they don't do around here anymore. Pennsylvania, you drive 202 and 422. The same potholes have been there for 10, 12 years. It doesn't make any sense. I literally, I've said this before, if they paid me a stipend of $200 a month and they allowed me to run out on the road at 2 in the morning, just with stuff I could get at the Home Depot, I could maintain the road literally better than the $400 million juggernaut of the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission that only has to worry about the turnpike. They don't even do the other roads, and that sucks, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I could do it. It's just, that is literally a reality breakdown. But it says, if it's not in the Constitution, the locals figure it out. Well, somehow, at this point, the federal government has their sticky fingers into, what? Tens of thousands of things. What's this that was retitled in a certain country? I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Well, it's called in Poland or something. The federal government has its sticky fingers in tens of thousands of things prohibited by the Constitution. So someone say, well, Matt, that's what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. If something is found unconstitutional, if the federal government proclaims that U.S. citizens have to the only thing they can eat on Wednesday is M&Ms, that's all they're allowed to eat to support their cronies in M&M Mars, then that will be found unconstitutional. But that's the whole point. That proves the Supreme Court is just a bunch of pawns and puppets. All of these 10,000 violations, or probably a million, that the 10th Amendment says that if it's not in the Constitution, local has to figure it out, but they still put their sticky fingers in it. In very few cases, they found it unconstitutional. So then the federal government gets involved, creates a giant federal agency, and then they have their sticky fingers in it forever, of which 5,000 of the 10,000 violations are under this ridiculously vague bullshit notion of interstate commerce. What a joke. Freaking joke that is. So there's no Supreme Court. And even if people think the Supreme Court is just these men and women on high and just altruistic individuals that are going to use the guidance of the Constitution to make decisions, they're so just and altruistic. The Supreme Court upheld Jim Crow. They upheld Jim Crow. They said, well, these Alabama counties are continuing to push separate water fountains and separate lunch tables, and the Supreme Court was like, that's fine. Yeah, that's right. That's fine. They were okay with that. Yeah, the Supreme Court looked at, what was it? Internment camps in Japan. Not in Japan, Japanese Americans, citizens, met internment camps right after World War II broke out in Pearl Harbor. Not World War II broke out, according to H.G. Wells. World War II broke out December 1941 for the United States in Pearl Harbor. And people screaming at me going, well, that was just the Japanese here, the immigrants, they put in those internment camps. No, they put U.S. citizens. They put U.S. citizens that just happen to be Japanese into concentration camps in the United States. And people after that believed the Constitution still existed, and they sang before certain NASCAR events, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I won't get thrown in a Japanese internment camp. I mean, come on. I mean, and they call us conspiracy people. It's oh my God. Oh boy. So guys, is that it for this? Oh, look at this, the watch. The one time they show the watch in Enemy of the State, 322. Oh boy. Oh boy. And it's a fine watch. It is. Is that a Casio? Yeah, it's a Casio. Is that the one you can get at Target in 1998 or at Walmart? Man, I love those Casios. You would have a countdown, alarm, all the different buttons. You go underwater with it. Man, digital watch. Those were the days. Getting a digital watch for Christmas in 1978 or 9 or something. It was a big deal. It was a big deal. Digital watch has a countdown. You took it out amongst your friends. You were superior over those friends. The ones that had the nice bike, well, so F what? You got this digital watch. It was something to show off, I can tell you. If you're under age 30, you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Simple pleasures back then. Simple pleasures. All right, so just to wrap up, is there anything else that I forgot to talk about? Enemy of the State, it is not retrocausality with all the players involved. It is absolutely planted predictive programming, an attempt to habituate and normalize a population for what will be coming a lot sooner than they anticipated. And that did the taking away of privacy. They were evil genius on it. They just worked perfectly. People are just completely accepting of it. But there is one other thing I want to talk about. No, it even had is that Scotty from Austin Powers taking over the family business for Dr. Evil? He was in it. It had everybody. It was Scotty. Okay, guys, on the back or last section here, let's look at how they used Julian Assange and used the movie The Fifth Estate to carry forth what they started with the movie Enemy of the State, or to cap it off, to cap the well. Their work is done. The Death Star has been complete. Then they did it with Snoden. This joke. I mean, okay. So you have Enemy of the State, and you have other things that talk about how they can listen to everything and blah, blah, blah. But most people still, through most part of the 2000s, think they still have this thing called the Constitution that will protect them, and the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments are still there, even though, well, there's a thing called the Patriot Act where they can just go in and listen to anybody. They were already doing it. The Patriot Act just made it was just to make it, quote, legal. It's to normalize it into the population. They're already doing it. Nothing changed. They didn't need a law. They're just waiting. Well, I want you to read this guy's emails. Jack Black sitting at his NSA terminal. They're only a few days away from passing the Patriot Act. I'm not going to touch his keyboard and invade anybody's rights until if the law changes, I'll do it, sir. But I'm willing to leave my post. They were just doing it, of course. What a joke. But they capped the whole destruction of privacy thing off with two caricatures. Julian Assange, and again, those driving, I'm showing this wonderful, wonderful movie poster with Benedict Cucumber head, The Fifth Estate. If you might want to pull over and check this out. If it's, I'm just kidding. It's you're not missing anything. It says here under Benedict Cucumber, it says, you can't expose the world's secrets without exposing your own. Who's the genius that came up with that? The Fifth Estate, coming out 10/18/13. And then you had Snoden, came out after that. So even if you knew nothing about, we've talked about this before, guys, even if you knew nothing about these events, when they cap it off with a Hollywood movie, in most cases, okay, it's in areas and themes like this, then it's all, there was no real guy named Julian Assange who was trying to altruistically run around with his laptop and help people. There was no real guy named Snoden who just said, I've had enough of corruption and I'm going to try to help the people. And then when they cap it off in a movie, it's kind of a giveaway about the whole nature of the event itself. And they did it with a 7-Eleven job application. They made a bunch of movies. They're all bad. I mean, Nick Cage running around down there as a Port Authority police officer with his canine unit, Sirius. Literally, the canine unit, the dog that died the day of, is called Sirius. I'm not John McEnroe and you cannot be serious. I'm serious. They said the dog's name was Sirius. that like that was in the script. And then you had Flight 93. Oh. Okay, let's get serious and see how they used the movie The Fifth Estate and then Snowden back to back, use them in conjunction together to, I don't know where this term is, cap the well. Once it's capped to completely seal off the minds of people that still believe they're free-thinking individuals. We're in the complete habituation and normalization of the end of privacy. They use these two caricatures. So Snowden came after Julian Assange. In the movie, he's just running around with a laptop with this guy here. He's got some people supporting him, and they're just taken down because they're collecting all this data of all these good people in all these foreign Latin American governments. They just want to give up their leaders. And I'm sure there was so many people trying to take down, was it Chavez at the time, not Maduro, and all these Latin American dictators, and all the good people in their regimes want to just give all their information. And where do we give it that can be exposed? Isn't the United States government so altruistic? Wouldn't the United States government say, we've set up a guy at a terminal, there's any Latin American regimes around the world that want to give up and expose their dictators and give up all the beans, spill the beans on them, we're here to help. Aren't we just about promoting freedom around the world? The United States government doesn't have that desk set up, so this guy has to do it. He has to make himself known that if you want to collect data on the corrupt regimes in which you are currently stuck in as an altruistic, say Argentinian or Argentine colonel, then you give your information to WikiLeaks. You give it to me, and I'll go public with it. Wouldn't you want to hand it to a good government like the British government, or wouldn't they want to help expose this stuff? No, you got to hand it to this guy who runs around with his laptop. So this came first. And see, they can't play the story out forever. So eventually he has to go on the run because there's an element, I don't think I'll get to it here, guys, because I'm just not prepared to talk about it. There's an element or theme where the governments, the Hillary Clintonites and all the deep state and everything here, they want to be seen as the bad guy. Again, I should put this into the if the world were real list. If the world were real, wouldn't the United States government just embrace not Snowden, this is Assange, it's probably the same caricature. And wouldn't they embrace him and say, you've got all these goods on all these foreign governments? Oh, but he had it on the U.S. government too, supposedly. See, they're set. It's all a play, guys. It's all a script. We'll talk about it some other time. So somebody crying out from their bathtub saying, well, Assange, man, I think he might be real. He had the goods on the U.S. government too. That's why all the governments wanted to go after him. They're playing multi-level chess, guys. We can't get into it now. We'll talk about it some other time. It's all fake. Of course it is. This is a joke. And then, okay, the story can't go on forever. So he gets held up he goes to the Ecuador embassy. I guess the movie doesn't show that, I don't think. I saw it once. It's not worth seeing again. I mean, he's Benjamin Cucumber, whatever. He's disturbing to begin with, but as in this role, oh my goodness. He disturbed me as, was it Khan in Star Trek? But he's hard to take in this role because Assange has these personality quirks or whatever. Anyway, it's such a joke. He approaches let's just get him off. Anybody can't stand looking at that. That's not going to show up. Got to show him. He approaches the Ecuador government for asylum. Let's look at the foreign movie poster. Are you kidding me? The Ecuador government. And Ecuador, they're so good. They're so altruistic. There's no corruption at all. They said, yeah, you know what? We're going to take a stand against these powers of the West. We're going to allow him to come in. And we all fell for it for I don't know, it was probably a year or a year and a half where I was believing this guy could be some altruistic guy trying to help people. I fell for it back in the day. Originally, Snoden. I thought finally somebody's stepping up to help. We all fell for it. So, guys, it's such a joke. If the world were real, the Ecuador is going to take this guy in and keep the West away so they can't arrest him. And, I mean, if anything were real, the powers of the West or the one world system or whatever would have sent a little team of men in black down to to see the Ecuador president. I'm going to pay a little visit, a little Don Corleone offer you can't resist. And they would have said, you see, Venezuela, you heard what's happening there? We did that. Would you like that to come here next week? I mean, there's no way they would hold off for one guy. It's all a ridiculous script. Somebody's screaming at me from their bathtub. Like, Matt, the people here know that. Move on. Okay, you're right. The point is, they couldn't, once he got held up in the embassy, okay, you're limited on where you can take the script from there. There's only so many times you can cover the Lady Gaga coming to visit him in a witch's outfit, which is true. Pamela Anderson coming to visit him in Ecuador embassy with bringing sandwiches, which is true. All this ridiculous elements they have to put in the script. You can't. It's played out. You can't do the old gig. You got to do the new gig. So here's the new gig. Right about the time they couldn't do any more with that story, they came out with this. And see, this guy he just wants to help people. And he worked for, it's a big consulting company like Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, from the Three Stooges. Dewey, who worked for the law firm for a while, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. And then it'll come back to me who he worked for. He could see these guys have to be given some sort of security clearance, which violates United States security. And he just started downloading shit onto a thumb drive. Then he goes on the run. I think the first place he went to with his thumb drives, armed with his thumb drives in his belt, walking through security, goes to China. He's the United States government. And he's enemy number one. They want him. They want to press charges at all these hearings on the House and the Senate and all the goods that maybe it's all a script. It's all a script. Why would they want to put into the minds of the American people that he has all this dark stuff and all the goods on the senators and the congressmen? We'll talk about that some other time. They're playing 3-dimensional, 5th-dimensional chess, guys. It's complicated. It's a script. Goes to China, then they want to kick him out, and of course these journalists are interviewing him from his hotel room, and you don't know is he held up in his hotel room? Is he going to be able to get out of the country? If he sticks his head out the window, is he going to get winged? And then somehow he ends up in Russia, which kind of cements the role that Putin plays in this grand reality world script. Ends up in Russia. Who knows? I don't know where he is today. I don't care where he is today. The company or the firm he worked for was Booz Allen Hamilton. The Booze Hounds have returned. The Booz Allen Hamilton. There's so many of these monstrous consulting firms. You looking like what? How are these consulting firms, of which there's 50 names many of you have heard of, hundreds of millions of dollars flying around daily. What are they all doing? It's incredible. That is a reality breakdown that maybe we'll talk about some other time. It's like McKinsey or whatever, and billions flow in McKinsey Consulting in New York. What are they doing? What's all this consulting for? It's completely a reality breakdown. In the past, it was just like business was simple. It's like I sell a product. We glaze apples with caramel. That's what we do. We put them on a stick and we sell something. Today, there's there's all the crap that ends up in your house is being made in China. That makes sense. A bunch of slave labor at a Chinese factory. It's spitting out, whether it be American flags, rubber dog crap on the other side. It's spitting out electronics, Apple, iPhones, all the stuff that comes out of the Chinese factories. But then all this other stuff in the United States. So what do we make here? It's just like a bunch of consulting. Consulting for what? It is complete. I don't. If you looked at Booz Allen Hamilton just by itself, and all its military contract work and work it does for the corporate and private sector, and you would be like, well, what's it doing to justify all that revenue? Okay, sorry. So the story continues. He's now held up in Russia. I don't care where he is today. When they make a movie about it, that caps the well as it being a fake event. If there was any question before, it was a fake event. And the point is, isn't it amazing, or isn't it a coincidence that just when the Julian Assange story started to go away, and what do we do with him now that he's, oh, let's bring some sort of sexual charges, and that they throw that in the script, and the reality script, whether it be the sentient world simulation dictating the reality script on behalf of the AI or whatever is standing behind the screen, or other weird elements associated with how everything is run. They have to have these scripts that the scripts flow of what's coming flows through the different presentations of reality. So in the Julian Assange presentation, you have one of the big whistleblowers, of course, is this Bradley Manning. Now, I don't know who he is, some Air Force captain or corporal, or he just think of it, just some guy that we'll get to that in a second, downloaded a bunch of stuff on a thumb drive, gave it to WikiLeaks, exposed what Matt Damon was running around Iraq during the movie The Green Zone, and he was altruistic in The Green Zone, Matt Damon, but he was trying to expose what the fake WMD leads that Matt Damon's crew was given. They just called him Chief. And hey, Chief, if I ever see Matt Damon on the street, I'm gonna say, hey, Chief, what's up? And I'll just call him Chief. That was him, and I guess it was the guy who played Edmond Deschantier in Kingdom of Heaven. He was the CIA agent who they used an Irish guy who probably was in Braveheart as a CIA agent. And he was working with Matt Damon because everybody else was evil and bad in the Green Zone, and he was trying to expose everything coming out of Iraq. So the point is, this Bradley Manning was one of these whistleblowers, and he gave a bunch of information to WikiLeaks, so he got arrested. And the theme, I was talking about the themes that have to weave through, see, then he needs to become a woman. If you look him up today, look him up as Chelsea Manning. And I believe he went much farther than Bruce, if you know what I mean. He went the whole kit and caboodle, the whole enchilada, or the opposite of that, if you know what I mean. He went the whole way. You don't need to tape nothing up no more. And this is Chelsea. All right, interesting. So the theme of the trans issue flows through this story. Isn't it incredible how they have to flow it in? And then his name's Chelsea. That flows back to Hillary Clinton. It's like the 6 degrees of Kevin's bacon. Incredible. It just the way it works, guys. This weird reality. The themes flow, and one theme has to then infect itself over here, and that's just how they did it with this Chelsea Manning during I originally thought it was Snoden, but he was leaking his stuff, of course, all part of the script to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, of course. So that's it, guys. They started the privacy, or the end of privacy, siege, the end of privacy as anybody could expect to know it. That started, I'm sure somebody could point to something far before Enemy of the State, 1998, but that was the big one. If you watch Enemy of the State, it is, if Will Smith, if he walks by a traffic camera, they're picking up his facial recognition. I mean, stuff that we think is just coming today, they've probably always had it, but it was shown to everybody in Enemy of the State. And people were saying, they couldn't really do that, could they? We have the Constitution to fall back on, and all this debate and this constant presentation of the loss of privacy, and that's partially what many of these news stories are about in terms of taking it on, or saying how horrible the invasion of privacy is in congressional hearings. It seems it's under the guise that they're fighting for your privacy, that they're fighting against government intrusion, but as your collective or your subconscious or unconscious mind, it's just more of it becomes a normalization. You get used to it. And then you completely accept it. Then you run the zombie scripts, like my aunt, who says, I have nothing to hide. And they capped it with Snoden, and they set up Snoden with the Julian Assange story. Plop out 2 movies, and you don't have to do anything else. Although something is very, very ridiculously ironic. And to me, this is just like a symptom of how the script of this reality has to do business. After all of this, you pretty much it's done. Its Death Star is complete. But what do we get all over the internet? We get this laptop here. When I had problems with the Mac before, I borrowed Pam had a pretty new HP laptop. I still have it here. She doesn't really use it. I really am using it a lot for the channel, so it's here. But she set it up, and it's always like, if it's not a Microsoft account problem popping up window every day, there's these little privacy messages, privacy update, privacy this. How many times do you get something in the mail from your insurance company or from whatever vendor? We're updating our privacy, this and that, privacy, privacy, privacy. Your credit card company will send you a privacy revision. So, you go to a European website and it's like, you need to click, we care so much about your privacy that you need to click you accept cookies on every single website. It's just one more thing that's meant to distract. And your subconscious, unconscious mind knows that privacy is completely gone. It knew it the moment it saw Enemy of the State in 1998. The dumb thinking part of the brain, the frontal lobes, is probably seeing all this privacy stuff is coming up. So at least the corporate world is still going out of its way to try to protect my privacy. And they're asking me to say, yes, I'm okay to cookies for a European website and all this. And my laptop keeps talking about privacy updates. It is like a mockery. I don't know any other way to put it. I'm sure it's a little bit more sophisticated in terms of what they're trying to do to your psyche regarding the total breakdown of privacy on one side, one that's completely accepted with the wellheads capped via Snoden and the Fifth Estate, and then all this privacy protection stuff that comes through the corporate world. Who knows what they're it's Edward Bernays times a million on steroids in terms of what they can get the human mind to do, and maybe it's just putting it into a state of literal word dis-ease, constant note, privacy destroyed over here, protection over here. It constantly creates internal conflicts in people's minds in the background that slowly drives them mad. I don't know, but they're evil genius in this regard, and what's it all for? To break down a human being, and so they never remember who they are, and more than that, they have no idea who they truly are from a spiritual perspective. That's all this whole system is designed to do, to remove a human being from understanding itself. So all the bull crap we just looked at, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know any of it. This is just one more element inside a sea of a million things it does to get a human being to forget its true spiritual nature. It all comes back to the same sentence. Thanks for listening and watching.